Now there's a prerequisite here. I'm assuming that everybody here is happy to have a Muslim mindset, because there's a whole conversation before this about why I should have a Muslim mindset. Should I really go about my life this way? I think that's a different topic, because we're talking about maintaining the Muslim mindset, not building. So there is an assumption here, but we'll go with that assumption. So this is a really nice reminder of something that we, with our sort of bodily memory, may not remember, but God is reminding us of this covenant that we have taken. You'll see in this verse the same phrases used at some point. But here it's قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَعَصَيْنَا. This talking about Bani Israel, where they said, we heard you, so at least they got the first bit right. But sometimes they don't even get the first bit right. We heard you, but we're going to disobey. I think that summarizes where we don't want to end up. And then the third verse, again, if you look here, it says, أَن يَقُولُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. But the interesting thing is now here you can see that it's the only response of the believers is that when they are invited to Allah and the Prophet, they say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. And then the Quran finishes off by telling us that it is these people who are successful, because what does God gain out of us? Submitting to Him. He doesn't need us. He doesn't get anything out of it. He's needless. So all of this is for our own benefit. So by obeying Him, we become successful. And again, a prerequisite is that you trust in God and you trust in what He's telling us to do for us to be able to hear and actually obey Him. So a bit of an assumption there, but let's go with it. Now, one of the prerequisites before we get into any of the main things is thinking about the way Islam deals with the human being. So I want you to remember AAA. Because we have three parts to ourselves. We have our body, we have our aql, and we have our soul. And Islam, and especially if you go into the Hawzawi sciences, and you'll see the traditional Hawzawi sciences are split into three as well. Yes, you have, and that's why we need to remember AAA, because there's three A's. So, to deal with the body, we have the science of ahkam and fiqh. That's all of our commands in this dimension of the world. Then you have your soul, which is akhlaq. Akhlaq is all about building your character, your soul. And then you have aqaid, which is dealing with the aql. Aqaid, you start off with the whole usul of your core beliefs, but which is technically called kalam in Hawza, but there's also something called kalam jadid, which deals with sort of modern outlooks that you need to look at, modern challenges, and how do we perceive. It's all about the mindset. So that's the area we want to focus on a bit more today, which is the aql, the aqaid, and the mindset that we have. So, I like this picture because it tells two very different stories, but it's the same picture twice. And this tells you that it's all about perspective. Mindset is all about perspective. But I want to take it one step further. Here it's subjective, right? It depends how the person's feeling, which side they're on, what they want to see out of it. But we know that we don't believe in a subjective worldview. We believe in an objective worldview. So let me paint a picture of a house where the curtains are drawn and it's the middle of the day and you're saying it's dark outside. That's probably a better picture to paint. Because here what's happening is we can't see, and these curtains would be the eyes of our heart, that they are closed so we can't see the light outside, so we're saying, oh, it looks dark. But having a Muslim mindset is opening those eyes of the heart so that you can see the light for what it truly is, and you can perceive and claim that frame of mind or that outlook. So, humans are designed to do everything for a reason, right? So we're talking, this is going to link to Abid's first point as well, and I think it's just a theme that we always see at the start of workshops, is we're designed to do everything for a reason. And even the things that we do that aren't necessarily good, we do with a good intention in some way. You get angry at someone, you lash out because you're trying to protect yourself. Trying to protect yourself is not a bad thing. It's just lashing out is, because you're protecting yourself in a way that isn't great. But there's a reason for everything. And so, even when it comes to a Muslim mindset at university, the first thing you have to ask is your niyyah for coming to university. Why are you here? Something that people who've heard me speak before will have heard me say this many times, but a niyyah isn't something you just start off with. You don't do your niyyah and then begin your salah. No, your niyyah is your why. It's the reason why you are doing what you are doing at the start when you set out for it, in the middle when you are doing it, and at the end when you are bringing that thing to a close. Why are you doing it? And so it's important that if we're going to be spending, 3 for King's Medics, I know it's 7 years at university, why are we doing it? Yeah, so I have 3 reasons. First one, we're in a society. Can't, as much as all the Arabs, parents and Asian parents would love us to be a world full of doctors and bankers, that's not how society is going to work. That, like if you take a look at that village doctor in some remote place, how valuable that person is to that society there, because if they're not there, then they've got no one to heal them from their problems. That one teacher who's there in that one school that's like half falling apart. The value of these people, you can't substitute them for someone else. This person can't go and be a banker, otherwise there's such a big gap in society. So to become a professional so that I can fill a gap and do my part for society was one of them. The most important to me was probably the second one, provide for my family. Because I know I want to have one and I want to make sure that I can have jobs that I can provide for them. So this is Ibrahim and Zainab, which I'm still trying to convince my wife about the name. We haven't actually had any children yet. Those aren't my kids. So my family. And the third one for me was to develop myself and my own skill sets. And this symbolizes that I'm becoming a more complete person, which we'll also come on to. That was my third reason for coming to university. So we covered niyyah. Let's move on to a different aspect. You come to uni, some people come from far, some people stay in a different place, some people don't, some people stay home. Either way, to some degree or another, there's a sort of independence that you're going to have that you didn't have before. How many people here are freshers? Just put hands up. Okay, so we've got more non-freshers than freshers. Well, I'll say to the freshers, I'll speak to the non-freshers first, is that these are reminders we always need, because we always forget how many blessings we have in front of us, and these reminders can help us make sure we make the most of the years that we do have here. For the freshers, just apply this from now and you won't be in that category that goes next year. It's like, I could do with a reminder about this. So when you're independent, you're going about this for yourself the first time. Independence comes with a sense of like that freedom, but also that sense of where am I going to place myself? And so who you pick as your friends is very, very important. Who you choose to spend your time with will shape who you are. We've all heard that saying of you are the combination of the 5 closest people to yourself. They shape you. The people you spend time with, their souls rub off on you and you become like them. So pick the right kinds of friends. And you guys are lucky. I can't say I spent a big time at LSE. I was at Queen Mary for the most part, but I was here, for about a year, on and off, split between the 2 universities. It was the year before the ABSOC got set up, and there was one meet-up between the people that would be the ABSOC of that time, and it was around the meet and greet time, and I had a stomach bug and I was bedridden, and I couldn't make it. I tried, but I just didn't make it. And then I only saw one of those people that whole year. So you're lucky you have this. Now the verse from the Quran that I've pulled out for this says to hold firmly to the rope of Allah, which if you look into the interpretations can equate to the Quran itself, can also equate to the Ahlul Bayt. You know where this is going. And it says do not disunite or do not be divided. The place where you're going to find the right kinds of people is here. So again, I can't emphasize how important it is, and you've heard it from Abid already, but The relationships you build here, the things you get involved with here, get involved. You don't have to be a committee member to get involved. That's how you build those real relationships. When you work together, you attend events together, you talk together, late into the night after your events are finished. Those are the kind of things that build those friendships, but build them with the right people. So, I'm not going to go into time management too much. It's more of a productivity thing. But Islam places a lot of emphasis on time management. And this is where it's like that opportunity is really there. I've got a workshop called The Perfect Recipe for Balance in Life, which is a 1.5 hour workshop. It wouldn't have fit today. We can always do that another time. But you have an opportunity here. And sometimes I think, especially when I spend time with people who aren't as fortunate as me to have these things that I still, youth is starting to become a bit questionable now, but still have a little bit left. When I spend time with people who don't have these things, I reflect on the fact that I'm also going to end up without these one day, inshallah, if I live that long. It's a scary thought. We take for granted so much. At one point I was like, I need to put this on my wall, like have a nice calligraphy. I don't have any walls to put it on, that's the problem, all my walls are taken up. But it really, really struck me that this is, something we take for granted, that we have this good health, we have this youth, you have freedom just now that you won't have later, and that's not because later is bad. Later is good, because when you start taking on those responsibilities, when you start having families, when you start having jobs, God's designed your life to be like that for a reason, and those things will give you things that you will never, ever, ever get just now. And so definitely go and pursue those things. I'm not going to be the kind of person who says, no, this is your time before you get trapped. No, this is your time of opportunity to do things that you might have to sacrifice later, and think, I'm making the right decision here, and I'm happy that I'm prioritizing my family, but I wish I had done this before when I didn't have to prioritize other things. So really make the most of your time. That's on the one side. On the other side, you also have duties. You've got duties towards yourselves, towards God, towards your family, towards your community. And it's important that all of these things are not seen as burdens, but as bounties that God has given you. Each of them will benefit you in some way, shape or form. Sometimes it will feel good and sometimes it will test you, but it's going to benefit you. And so when you have these things, it's only fair that you do justice to them and you look after the things that are your duties to look after. This is the hadith that we introduced the Balanced Lifestyle Workshop with, where Imam Kazim alayhi salam talks about how to split up your time. So 1 hour for supplication to Allah, so one is for your duties towards God, one to society and work, one for community and relationships and family and people around you. And then there's one part which is what Abid was saying, don't go at 100%. It's in the hadith that you need your me time. Me time isn't a new concept, it was there in the time of Imam Kazim as well. You take that time and do things that you'll enjoy, recuperate, make time for that, because it reinvigorates you for all the other things. So don't overwork yourselves, and remember, it's not about being busy, it's about being productive. So make sure you have that downtime so your uptime is up, not that your uptime becomes downtime because all of it is up. So time management was point number 3. Point number 4. Well, actually, before point number 4, I've got one quick discussion that I want you to have. Bearing in mind 2 things that we said. Opportunity, duty. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you want to make sure you protect time for during your year at uni? Before you answer this question, it's just one point that Abid has drilled home enough, so I'm not going to repeat it too many times after he has. But when you look at your duties towards God, one of them is salah. So when you protect time for salah as well. That should be one of those priorities. It goes back to our mindset. We hear, we obey. There's priorities there. When you hear and you obey, that becomes the priority. When you have a Muslim mindset, the godly lifestyle becomes your priority, everything else becomes secondary. Okay, point 4. So we've covered niyyah, we've covered your relationships, we've covered your time management at university. Who would be apt to have this discussion? So obviously, it's a mixed gender environment at university. Navigating that is always people are on a huge spectrum of how you should go about it, and an even bigger one on how they actually go about it. So it's worth thinking about this, and how do you manage it, and how do you deal with the fact that every speaker seems to have slightly different point on the spectrum on which they give advice. That used to always boggle me. I read the beginning of a book by Shaykh Mutahari in my second year, which gave me some really nice insight into this. So he has a book called The Rights of Women in Islam, and in the introduction he talks, and I promise this will apply to both men and women, I'm going to come back to it. He talks about, in the introduction, the two types of oppression that women have faced in history. He said that until a certain point, and you'll see this in terms of the suffragette movement in the early 20th century and all this other stuff, you'll see that women were oppressed because they weren't treated like human beings in society. Their human rights, that human dignity that they should be deserved, was taken away from them. And that was a form of oppression that they faced. Then you start to see a point which things start to change, and women's rights are championed more. Women get voting rights, women get these rights, women get those rights, but women are still oppressed. And he explains how. What starts to happen is that women's human rights start to be championed, and instead, and I think now especially this is becoming a hotter topic, their femininity gets oppressed. Now they start being treated as if they're just human and their gender doesn't matter anymore. They started to take on sort of roles or being treated the way that men are treated just because they're also human, and oppressing their femininity. So you see there's a shift. I'm not saying that the human side of women isn't oppressed anymore, but what I'm saying is that you'll see a shift where there was a time when it was very heavily, the oppression was focused on the humanity of women, and then afterwards the femininity of women. That taught me something. That when you take any, like women taking men or men taking women, you have to look at the fact that they are two things. One, they are human beings. So I say treat each other with the warmth and the friendliness of being humans. Don't be weird with each other. Yeah? So be humans towards each other. But then also realize that that person is of the opposite gender. So treat them with the warmth and the friendliness of being human, but also with the distance and the respect of them being of the opposite gender, and have both at the same time. So I'm not going to say, oh, speak to them only when necessary, or no, you're allowed to be friends with them. I'm not going to get into that. But what I am going to say that if you take this and try to apply this, then I don't think anybody's going to disagree. And that really helped me in navigating all of this stuff. Shaking hands is something that I think it becomes a bit more formal the further you go on, when you start having interviews and stuff. But just, you might come across it at your time in university. I tested this out with two men because I thought having one approach for everyone's easier than trying to have two different approaches in society. I had a mock interview at some bank that was offering them for free, so I went along, and I had two men who took my interview. So when I greeted them, all I said to them was, in my culture, we greet by putting a hand on our heart. And they were like, oh, that's so interesting, and they like really liked it. And then we had the interview. Alhamdulillah, the mock interview went well. I got good feedback. We were coming, they escorted me back to the waiting room where I'd get signed off before I go back to uni and all the rest of it. And I was about to turn around and go in, and they were like, oh, and then they're both this tall, by the way. They both bent and put their hand on their heart. And then I put my hand on my heart, and we all parted happily. So there are quite easy ways, if you set out your stall from the beginning, that you can avoid situations like that very, very easily. What you can't avoid is when you don't expect it. So obviously peers, I didn't shake hands with people at university who I was like in class with. And there was one time where I think I did something nice for like a girl on my class that I had quite a few projects with. and she went and like hugged me, and I was just like, whoa. So things like that sometimes you can't expect, and you don't really know what to do, and you just kind of suffer through it. But there are times when you know it's going to come up, so just set your expectations beforehand. That was a really nice, easy one for me. It was better than what I did the work experience. When I was 15, I was working in Waitrose for a week through school, and the branch manager was coming to see these two kids who were like doing work experience. And she was going to come and shake my hand, so I quickly just grabbed as much stuff from the shelves as I could so my hands were full. I think just the hand on the heart thing does a better job. So that was a bit of advice. Let's not shy away from the fact that we're adults here. So half of the room has been baligh for a decade, others for maybe also a decade, maybe a bit less. We're all adults here, and it's important to, I think, address that elephant in the room that we're all going to have desires. But God gives us a route for those things as well. I'm not saying that should be your primary reason, that's definitely not what I'm going to say, but I will give you some advice. Best thing you can do, and this might be controversial for some, but getting married is really, really important. And we know that, oh, I'm not ready yet, I'm not mature enough yet, I don't have a place or a house or a job or all of this kind of stuff. There are 100 barriers to getting married, and you'll never feel ready, but there are 1,000 solutions most of the time to those 100 barriers. And really we could go on about this all night, because I know it'd be a whole discussion and people will have very, very different views about this, but I really, really recommend there's verses in the Quran I can bring, there's a hadith that we all hear before those nikah ceremonies that we go to, that we hear about marriage. Getting married can really, really change your life in a good way. And I know we also tend to have this sort of if this then that kind of mentality, where we try to logic the benefits of things, the benefits of getting married now versus later. Let me tell you one small story about me, and this will show you that you can't logic your way through this one. So every Ramadan that used to come around, I would have a sort of plan at the beginning of the month of Ramadan. This is what I want to achieve by the end, this is how I'm going to get there, these are the things I'm going to do. Sometimes I managed to follow through on my plan fully, and sometimes partially. But what I found was the changes that I wanted to have on me, they weren't being had in the way that I would hope. I wasn't actually seeing that light come into my heart. So I can't explain this, but after I got married, every Ramadan I'm telling you, so blessed, that even if I don't have a very good plan, I still come out with something so much better than before. And I've heard those hadith about it being half of your faith, and how the salah of a married person is 70 times better than the salah of a single person, and all these other things. I'm telling you, there's no logic to it, but I just know for me with that story of my Shahr Ramadan that it boiled down to that companion that I had in my life. I cannot stress the importance of this enough, especially in a world where people sometimes get a bit picky or think they're not ready, and society likes to try and convince us to push everything into the distance when it comes to settling down. Really, really take it seriously. And if you are not ready, if you really aren't ready, then make it a priority to prepare. Because we sometimes say that, oh, we'll be ready when then we don't do anything about it. If you feel like you're not mature enough, start taking on responsibilities to prove to yourself you can. Whatever it is that makes you feel you're not ready. If you don't, like, I knew that I'd have a bit of marry someone from your own community thing with my parents. So I just started joking around about bringing people from bringing Africans, bringing white, like having a white wife, all of this stuff from the age of 17, so that when I do venture a little bit out, I ended up marrying someone from a different community, then it's not like alien to them, and I've had those jokey conversations with them in the past. Start preparing from now. You saw all those books that Abid had up. Oh, there's this huge personal development space in the secular world. We don't have secular personal development, but what Islam has instead is your character development, or in other words, akhlaq. And you can see the Prophet himself has said that he has been sent, and in some versions of this hadith it says he has only been sent to perfect our akhlaq. And that's really important. That first of all, what is akhlaq? Akhlaq isn't mannerisms, that's adab. We like to confuse the two terms. Akhlaq is the idea of taking out the bad traits and putting in the good traits. So essentially it is becoming a complete human being, insan al-kamil. Anything that develops you as a person to become a more complete person is this journey of akhlaq for you. And the Prophet himself has said that that's why he was sent to us. Again, university is a stepping stone in your life, but when you're in university, see every opportunity as a way of testing or developing your akhlaq. I'm going to go to you first, because I can tell you a little bit about me, but I want to hear more about you. I learned the value of investing in other people and in relationships through my time at university. And that made me a certain type of person. I learned perseverance at university. I learned planning and becoming a better planner so that I can effectively do my duties properly at university. Everything is an opportunity for you to develop your character. So we talked about Muslim mindset being all about listening and obeying Allah. We talked about how a Muslim mindset is your reason for coming to university and the niyyah with which you go about things. We said your Muslim mindset is developed by the friendships that you hold, the relationships that you build, the communities that you are part of. We said that a Muslim mindset is how you go about dealing with the different things in your life, how you manage those different duties, how you manage your time, and how you make the most of the opportunities that God has given you. We said that a Muslim mindset is also navigating society and the challenges of society in the modern world, such as a mixed gender society or university, in a way that is appropriate and finds a good balance in terms of what you do. And then we said a Muslim mindset is looking at your journey towards achieving a complete character every step of the way. My key takeaway is that your spiritual life, as we like to call it, there was never such a phrase back in the day before our time. It's a modern term, because there was no such thing as another type of life. When there was, 99% of the world had some kind of religion. Your spiritual life, as much as the secular world likes to tell you it is, it's not over there. It's not when you go for salah and then you come out and go into your work life. Your spiritual life, your Muslim mindset is here, it's now, and when you are doing all these random things that we like to say these are the non-religious bits of our life, that is you living Islam, living the Muslim mindset right there and then. That's not like here's the practice stuff or here's the arbitrary stuff and then there's the real stuff. No, every aspect of your life at university is your real life. That's the path you are on. So although the main thing that I want you to remember, that the way you study, the way you work, the way you build relationships, everything you do, that's your spiritual life and that's your Muslim mindset right there and then. Thank you for listening. I really hope you benefited. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.